Picture this, a badge gleaming under city lights, sworn to protect, but dripping with blood. 10 cops, detectives, beat officers, commanders, thought they were untouchable. They traded their oaths for cash, power, and murder. But the bars closed in, and justice didn't wait. Some died in their cells. Others rot there still. This is their story, and it starts now. Louis Ippolito and Stephen Caracappa, the Mafia Cops. Louis Ippolito came into the world on July 22, 1948, in East New York, Brooklyn. His father, Ralph "Fat the Gangster" Ippolito, was a soldier in the Gambino crime family, a man who lived by the gun and died by it, gunned down in 1979. His uncle James "Jimmy the Clam" Ippolito was another mob enforcer, murdered that same year alongside his son in a hit that screamed family business. Louis grew up steeped in this underworld, a kid who idolized the sharp suits and sharper threats of his kin. He was a bodybuilder, a bruiser with a loud mouth, and by the late 1960s, he'd swaggered into the NYPD, claiming he wanted to break the family curse. But the mob wasn't a shadow he could outrun, it was his DNA. Stephen Caracappa, born in 1942 on Staten Island, cut a different figure. Quiet, calculating, the kind of man who'd slit your throat and not blink. Raised in a working-class Italian-American family, he dodged the Vietnam draft with a medical deferment and joined the NYPD in 1969 after a stint as a telephone lineman. He climbed the ranks fast, landing in the organized crime homicide unit by the 1980s. No mob pedigree here, just a hunger for control and a knack for staying invisible. Together, Ippolito's brash chaos and Caracappa's cold precision made a lethal pair. By the mid-1980s, they turned their badges into tools for the Lucchese crime family, one of New York's infamous five families. It started small, leaking intel on police raids, tipping off mobsters like Anthony Gaspipe Casso, the Lucchese underboss who'd become their puppet master. But greed sharpened their edge. For $4,000 a month, they graduated to murder. Their first hit came in 1986. Eddie Lino, a Gambino capo, gunned down on the Belt Parkway for $65,000. Caracappa pulled the trigger from an unmarked cop car while Ippolito drove. Then came Israel Greenwald, a jeweler snagged in a mob scam, kidnapped, shot, and dumped in a Brooklyn garage, his body rotting until 1989. 8 confirmed kills piled up. Rivals, informants, loose ends, all for a total of $375,000 in blood money over a decade. They operated like ghosts. Ippolito flaunted his mob ties, while Caracappa buried himself in files, deflecting suspicion with his monotone efficiency. They staged fake arrests, fed cops bad leads, and watched investigations crumble. In 1990, Ippolito retired to Las Vegas, chasing a Hollywood dream, writing scripts, even snagging a cameo in Goodfellas, while Caracappa stayed on until 1992, then joined him in the desert. They thought distance would bury their past. They thought wrong. The cracks started in 1994 when Burton Kaplan, a Lucchese associate they'd trusted, got pinched. He stewed in prison for a decade. By 2004, facing life behind bars, Kaplan flipped. He sat with the feds, DEA, and NYPD, spilling a ledger of their sins, dates, names, the exact weight of each betrayal. On March 9, 2005, the trap snapped shut. Ippolito and Caracappa sat in a Las Vegas diner, sipping coffee, when agents swarmed. Handcuffs clicked over wrists that once held guns for the mob. The arrest hit the headlines like a bomb. The trial kicked off in Brooklyn's federal court in 2006, a circus of rage and revelation. Kaplan took the stand, his voice steady as he detailed every hit: Lino's execution, Greenwald's grave, the $4,000 checks from Casso. Prosecutors stacked 70 charges: racketeering, extortion, obstruction, 8 counts of murder. Ippolito blustered, claiming he was framed. The jury didn't buy it. On April 6, 2006, after 6 days of deliberation, the verdict landed: guilty on all counts. Sentencing dragged until March 6, 2009, when Judge Jack Weinstein, voice like gravel, handed down life without parole, plus 100 years each for good measure. They landed in high-security federal pens, Caracappa at FMC Butner in North Carolina, Ippolito at USP Tucson in Arizona. Cops don't fare well behind bars, especially ones who sold out their own. Caracappa's health cracked first. Stage 4 cancer diagnosed in 2016. He begged for compassionate release, his pleas scrawled in shaky handwriting, but the courts said no. On April 8, 2017, he died in his cell. Ippolito held out longer. On November 7, 2019, he too was gone. Cause unlisted, just another body logged in the prison morgue. No fanfare, no mob honors, just silence. John Burge, Chicago's torture king. A badge can be a shield or a bludgeon. John Burge chose the latter, turning Chicago's South Side into a chamber of horrors. From the 1970s to the 1990s, this decorated police commander didn't just enforce the law, he broke it, torturing over 200 men, mostly black, into confessions for crimes they didn't commit. John Burge was born on December 20, 1947, in Chicago's Southeast Side. Raised in a white Irish-American family, he grew up in the shadow of the city's racial divides. Neighborhoods split by color, tension simmering. Burge excelled in school, captaining the football team at Bowen High and earning straight A's. His yearbook pegged him as most likely to succeed, but success for Burge would take a dark turn. In 1966, at 18, he enrolled at the University of Illinois, but dropped out to join the Army, serving in Vietnam from 1968 to 1970. Stationed at a military police post in South Korea, he learned interrogation tactics, skills he'd later warp into something monstrous. Back home, he joined the Chicago Police Department in 1970. Burge climbed fast, patrolman to detective by 1972, sergeant by 1977, lieutenant by 1981. By the late 70s, he led a unit in Area 2, a Southside district battered by crime and poverty. To his men, he was a hero, tough, loyal, a cop's cop with a chest full of commendations. To his suspects, he was a demon. Starting around 1972, Burge and his midnight crew turned interrogation rooms into torture dens. Over 2 decades, they brutalized at least 200 men, electric shocks to genitals, suffocation with plastic bags, mock executions with guns pressed to temples. Most victims were black, poor, caught in the city's drug and gang wars. Burge's favorite tool was the black box, a crude device with electrodes that sent jolts through handcuffed bodies. One survivor, Anthony Holmes, described it in 2003. "I thought I was going to die. He kept saying, 'Confess or it gets worse.'" The confessions piled up, dozens sent to prison, some to death row, for murders and robberies they didn't commit. Burge's unit boasted high clearance rates, earning praise from brass and prosecutors. In 1982, Andrew Wilson, arrested for killing 2 cops, told doctors he'd been shocked and burned by Burge's crew. Photos showed scars. A judge ignored them. By 1989, the People's Law Office, a group of activist attorneys, started digging, collecting stories from survivors like Daryl Cannon, who'd endured mock executions in 1983. The system shielded Burge. Promotions, medals, a blind eye from City Hall. The tide turned in 1991. A whistleblower cop, fed up with the silence, tipped off investigators. In 1992, a Chicago Police Department report confirmed systematic abuse under Burge, naming 50 victims. The city fired him in 1993. But criminal charges? Nothing stuck. Statutes of limitations had run dry on the torture itself. Burge retired to Apollo Beach, Florida, living off a $3,000 a month pension, fishing in the sun while his victims rotted in cells. Survivors kept fighting, filing lawsuits, winning exonerations. By 2003, Governor George Ryan, citing Burge's shameful legacy, commuted 4 death row sentences tied to his confessions. The pressure built. Civil suits cost Chicago $20 million, and activists demanded blood. In 2008, federal prosecutors found a backdoor: perjury. Burge had lied under oath in a 2003 lawsuit, denying he'd ever tortured anyone. The feds pounced, arresting him at his Florida home on October 21, 2008. The trial hit Chicago's Dirksen Courthouse in 2010, a reckoning 38 years in the making. Survivors took the stand: Holmes, Cannon, Melvin Jones, detailing shocks, bags, burns. Burge, now 62, sat stone-faced, his hair white, his swagger gone. On January 20th, 2011, he was convicted of perjury and obstruction of justice. Judge Joan Lefkow didn't mince words. "You were the commander. You knew." Sentence: 4.5 years in federal prison. Prison wasn't kind to a torturer. Burge landed at FC Warren Butner Low in North Carolina, a minimum security camp, but even there, his name was poison. Inmates, many black, knew his rap sheet. He served 3 years, released to a halfway house in 2014, then back to Florida's sun. No attacks, no dramatic end. Just a quiet cage for a man who'd thrived on screams. On September 19, 2018 at 70, he died of heart failure, free but disgraced, his pension stripped in 2014 after public outcry. Chicago paid out $100 million more in reparations by 2023, and over 100 of his victims walked free, their names cleared. Daniel Holtzclaw, the predator in uniform. A badge can open doors or prey on the powerless. Daniel Holtzclaw turned his into a hunting license, stalking black women in Oklahoma City's poorest corners. From 2013 to 2014, this patrol officer raped and assaulted at least 13 victims, exploiting their fear of the law he swore to uphold. Daniel Ken Holtzclaw was born on December 10, 1986 in Guam, a U.S. territory where his father, Eric, served as an Air Force Master Sergeant. His mother, Kumiko, a Japanese immigrant, raised him and his sister in a military household. By the early 90s, the family settled in Enid, Oklahoma, a quiet town of 50,000. Mostly white, Holtzclaw stood out. Biracial, tall at 6 feet 1 inch, broad-shouldered, a natural athlete. At Enid High, he was a star linebacker, earning all state honors and a scholarship to Eastern Michigan University in 2005. There he majored in criminal justice, bulking up to 260 pounds, dreaming of NFL glory. But injuries sidelined him, and by 2010, he was back in Oklahoma. Holtzclaw joined the Oklahoma City Police Department in 2011. To his peers, he was a golden boy, clean-cut, eager, the son of a cop. His dad joined Enid PD after the military. To his prey, he was a nightmare. Starting in December 2013, Holtzclaw targeted black women, sex workers, drug users, single moms, women he figured wouldn't be believed. He'd stop them on patrol, run their names for warrants, then strike. Some he forced into oral sex in his cruiser, others he raped in alleys or homes, always with the same threat: tell and I'll bury you. One victim, JL, a 57-year-old grandmother, described it in court. He said, "This is what you do for a free ride. I was too scared to move." The numbers grew. 13 confirmed victims, likely more who stayed silent. Holtzclaw kept records, names, dates, scribbled in a notebook, arrogant enough to think he'd never be caught. His pattern was surgical: late-night shifts, low-income black neighborhoods, women with records he could leverage. Over 6 months, he assaulted at least once a month, sometimes more, a predator cloaked in blue. The department missed it. His dash cam off, his reports vague, his charm disarming. But one woman wouldn't break. On June 18, 2014, JL fought back. After Holtzclaw raped her on her porch, she called 911. Detectives Kim Davis and Rocky Gregory took her seriously. Swabs confirmed DNA on Holtzclaw's uniform pants. By August 21, 2014, he was arrested at his Northwest Oklahoma City apartment, stunned as cuffs clicked. 12 more victims came forward, their stories mirroring JL's. Holtzclaw's world imploded, fired from OCPD, charged with 36 counts, including rape, sexual battery, and stalking. His family stood by him, sobbing in public. His victims stood taller, ready to testify. The trial hit Oklahoma County District Court in November 2015. Holtzclaw, 28, sat blank-faced as 13 women, ages 17 to 57, took the stand. Prosecutors laid out DNA, patrol logs, and his own notes, damning proof of a calculated spree. The defense floundered, claiming consent or lies, but the all-white jury didn't buy it. On December 10, 2015, his 29th birthday, they convicted him on 18 counts. 4 first-degree rapes, plus lesser charges. Cheers erupted. Victims hugged. On January 21, 2016, Judge Timothy Henderson stacked the sentences. 263 years, no parole. "You preyed on the weakest," he said. "You're a danger forever." Prison swallowed him whole. Holtzclaw landed at Lexington FMC in Oklahoma, then moved to FC1 Englewood in Colorado, a medium-security federal pen. At 6 feet 1 inch, 260 pounds, he's a target. Cops who rape don't get respect behind bars, especially not from black inmates who know his story. Reports hint at threats, isolation, a life on edge. He's appealed nonstop, claiming bias, bad lawyers, losing every time, the latest in 2022. At 38 now, he's got centuries ahead. Justin Volpe, the nightstick of shame. A badge can stand for justice or become a tool of savagery. Justin Volpe turned his into a weapon, unleashing a night of horror that scarred a man and a city. On August 9, 1997, this NYPD officer committed an act so vile it shattered trust in the Blue Line. He sodomized Abner Louima, a Haitian immigrant, with a broken broomstick in a Brooklyn precinct bathroom. Justin Anthony Volpe was born on May 13, 1972, in Staten Island, New York. His father, Robert Volpe, was a legend, an NYPD detective turned artist, known for busting art thieves and painting with passion. Raised in a middle-class Italian-American home, Justin idolized his dad, soaking up stories of cop glory. By 1994, at 22, he joined the NYPD, fueled by dreams of matching his father's name. Assigned to the 70th Precinct in Flatbush, Brooklyn, Volpe hit the streets hard, racking up arrests in Flatbush's gang-heavy blocks. To his squad, he was a hotshot, 25, cocky, with a fiancée, Susan Siracusa. On August 9, 1997, that fuse blew. Outside Club Rendezvous, a Haitian nightclub on Flatbush Avenue, a fight broke out. Volpe and his partner, Charles Schwartz, waded in, arresting Abner Louima, a 30-year-old security guard with no rap sheet. Louima wasn't the problem. Volpe's rage was. At the 70th Precinct, things turned feral. Volpe, believing Louima had punched him, a claim later debunked, dragged him to a holding cell, beat him with fists and a radio, then escalated to depravity. In the precinct bathroom, Volpe snapped a broomstick, ordered Louima to the floor, and rammed the jagged end into his rectum, tearing his colon and bladder. "This is for your own good," he snarled as Louima screamed. Schwartz held Louima down. Some say he didn't, but the jury disagreed. Volpe then shoved the stick, smeared with blood and feces, into Louima's mouth, breaking his teeth. Left bleeding in a cell, Louima nearly died. Volpe bragged later, waving the stick at colleagues, thinking he'd walk free. But Louima, hospitalized for 2 months with internal surgeries, wouldn't stay silent. On August 13th, he told nurses, "They raped me." The story exploded. The NYPD scrambled. Volpe was suspended, arrested on August 15, 1997, alongside Schwartz and 2 others. The city erupted. Protests. Mayor Rudy Giuliani, usually pro-cop, called it an abomination. The federal government took the case, charging Volpe with violating Louima's civil rights, assault, and obstruction. The trial hit Brooklyn's federal court in May 1999. Louima, soft-spoken but unshaken, recounted the horror. Nurses confirmed his injuries, punctured organs, a body barely holding on. Volpe's defense unraveled. His claim of roughing up a thug fell apart against the brutality scale. Halfway through, on June 8, 1999, he cracked, pleading guilty to 6 counts, including assault and witness tampering, hoping for mercy. The courtroom held its breath on December 13, 1999, for sentencing. Judge Eugene Nickerson didn't blink. 30 years in federal prison, no parole, plus $277,000 in restitution to Louima. "Your acts were depraved," he said. "You disgraced the uniform. Volpe, 27, sobbed, his fiancée weeping behind him. Schwartz got 15 years for aiding the assault, later reduced to 5 for perjury, while 2 others walked on lesser charges. Louima, scarred but alive, settled with the city for $8.75 million in 2001, the largest police brutality payout ever at the time. Volpe landed at FC1 Lewisburg in Pennsylvania, then bounced to other federal pens, last reported at FC1 Milan in Michigan. A cop who tortured a black man doesn't blend in behind bars. In 2000, inmates at Lewisburg jumped him, breaking his ribs, payback for Louima's pain. Guards keep him low profile now, but at 5'10", 200 pounds, he's no fighter in a world that smells weakness. He's appealed, claiming coercion in his plea. Courts shut him down, the latest in 2018. Released briefly in 2013 due to a technicality, he was yanked back after public outcry, his sentence upheld. At 52 in 2025, he's got until 2027, maybe sooner with good behavior. But freedom won't erase his name's stain. William Vasquez Baez, Puerto Rico's drug lord cop. A badge can uphold the law or smuggle death through it. William Vasquez Baez turned his into a passport for crime, serving Puerto Rico's police by day and its drug lords by night. From 2002 to 2017, this officer didn't just bend the rules, he shattered them, helping the brutal La Onu gang ship cocaine to New York and even delivering a snitch to his slaughter. William Vasquez Baez was born in the early 1970s in Caguas, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico in the 70s and 80s was a U.S. territory wrestling with poverty and corruption. Details of his childhood are scarce. No yearbook stars or football fields here. But he was street smart, tough, shaped by a place where survival often trumped rules. By 1994, at about 23, he joined the Puerto Rico Police Department. Assigned to the Carolina precinct near San Juan, he started as a beat cop, patrolling neighborhoods where gangs like La Onu and La Rompe Onu waged bloody turf wars. Vasquez Baez rose steadily. By the 2000s, he was a seasoned officer, trusted, unremarkable to his peers. Married with kids, he lived a quiet life in Carolina. Around 2002, he linked up with La Organización de Narcotraficantes Unidos, La ONU, a drug syndicate led by kingpins like José Coquito Figueroa Agosto. For 15 years, he played both sides, pocketing cash to guard cocaine shipments headed for New York streets. Kilos moved under his watch, hundreds, maybe thousands, funneled through Puerto Rico's ports, a key stop in the Caribbean drug trade. He wasn't just a lookout, he was muscle, armed with his service pistol and police intel. The bloodiest chapter came in 2011. La ONU had a problem. Carlos Javier Baez Vega, a low-level dealer turned informant, was talking to the feds. Vasquez Baez got the call. On March 31, 2011, he lured Baez Vega to a Carolina street under the guise of a routine stop. Instead, he handed him over to La ONU hitmen, Angelo Muncho Millones and others, who beat him, shot him, and torched his body in a car. The massacre didn't stop there. 5 others died that day, a message to snitches. Federal agents, working a sprawling RICO case against La ONU, flipped a gang insider, identity sealed, who fingered Vasquez Baez as the cop on the take. The DEA and FBI tracked him. On April 25, 2017, they struck, arresting him at his Carolina home as his family watched in shock. The indictment hit hard: conspiracy to distribute cocaine, murder in aid of racketeering, firearms charges tied to Baez Vega's death. Evidence piled up: witness testimony, burner phone records, a trail of drug busts he'd sabotaged. The PRPD suspended him, but the damage was done. The trial landed in San Juan's federal court in 2021, a slow grind under Judge Francisco Besosa. Prosecutors painted him as a traitor. 20 witnesses, including ex-gang members, detailed his double life. One testified, he'd flash his badge to clear the way. Coke moved, we paid. On February 10, 2022, they convicted him on all counts: murder, drug trafficking, the works. On July 28, 2022, Besosa dropped the hammer. 30 years in federal prison, no parole, a life sentence for a man nearing his twilight. Prison swallowed him fast. Vasquez Baez landed at FC1 Coleman Medium in Florida. At 5'9", stocky but aging, he's no match for inmates who hate traitors, especially one tied to a snitch's fiery end. Guards keep him apart, knowing his badge and his crimes make him prey. He's appealed, filing motions in 2023 claiming bad evidence. Denied flat. At roughly 53 in 2025, he's got until 2047. When does loyalty turn to murder? You'll see soon. Charles Schwartz, the shadow in the bathroom. Charles Schwartz didn't wield the broomstick that tore Abner Louima apart, but he stood in the room where it happened, pinning a man down as his partner unleashed hell. On August 9, 1997, this NYPD officer became a cog in one of the ugliest police brutality scandals New York ever saw. Charles Schwartz was born in 1965 in Brooklyn's Dyker Heights, a tight-knit Italian-American neighborhood of row houses and corner delis. A stocky kid with a buzz cut, Schwartz was no standout. Average grades at New Utrecht High, no sports glory, just a guy who blended in. After graduating in 1983, he drifted, odd jobs, maybe a stint fixing cars like his dad, before joining the U.S. Marine Corps in 1986. 3 years in the service toughened him up, taught him discipline, and by 1990 at 25, he traded fatigues for an NYPD badge. Assigned to the 70th precinct in Flatbush, Schwartz settled into patrol life, marrying Andra DeMarco, a fellow cop's sister, in 1995. To his squad, he was solid. 5 feet 9 inches, muscular, a Marine's grit, reliable in a scrap. By 1997, he'd paired up with Justin Volpe, a brash rookie he'd known from Staten Island ties. They clicked. Schwartz, the steady hand, Volpe, the loose cannon. On August 9, 1997, that bond turned deadly. Outside Club Rendezvous, a fight erupted. Drunk patrons, flying bottles. Schwartz and Volpe arrested Abner Louima, a 30-year-old Haitian immigrant with no record, hauling him to the 70th precinct. What followed wasn't justice. It was a descent into madness. In the precinct bathroom, Volpe snapped, beating Louima, then sodomizing him with a broken broomstick, shredding his colon and bladder. Schwartz was there, and the fight over his role still burns. Prosecutors said he held Louima down, pinning his legs as Volpe struck. Schwartz swore he didn't, claimed he was outside, escorting another suspect, never saw the bathroom horror. Witnesses wavered, cops clammed up, Louima's memory blurred by pain. But blood on Schwartz's boots and a jury's verdict tied him to the scene. Volpe bragged later, waving the stick. Schwartz stayed mute, letting his partner take the lead. Louima, left bleeding in a cell, nearly died. 2 months in the hospital, surgeries to survive. On August 13th, he whispered to nurses, "They raped me," and the city lit up. Schwartz arrested on August 15th, 1997, with Volpe and 2 others, suspended as protests raged. The feds took over, charging Schwartz with violating Louima's civil rights and lying about it. The trial hit Brooklyn federal court in May 1999, a racial powder keg. Louima testified, soft, steady, pointing at Schwartz. "He held me." Nurses showed photos, torn organs, a broken man. Volpe's mid-trial guilty plea didn't help. On June 25, 1999, the jury convicted Schwartz of aiding the assault. A second trial in 2000 nailed him for perjury, swearing he wasn't there. Sentencing came on June 27, 2000. Judge Eugene Nickerson gave him 15 years and 8 months in federal prison. No parole. Schwartz's wife sobbed. His family railed at a frame-up. By 2002, a higher court cut his sentence to 5 years, tossing the assault conviction for shaky evidence, keeping perjury. Released in 2002 after 40 months, he'd served at FCI Otisville in New York, a medium security spot where cops don't win friends. Inmates taunted him, Louima's boy, but no beating stuck. He kept his head down, Marine discipline intact. Back in Brooklyn by 2003, he faded. Worked construction, lived quiet with Andra, shunned by old cop pals. Robert Smith, the braggart who fell. Robert Smith was born in the mid-1980s in Hempstead, Long Island. Raised in a black family, his parents' names lost to public records. Smith wasn't a star, Decent grades at Hempstead High, no sports trophies, just a teen who liked to talk big. After graduating around 2003, he bounced through jobs, maybe retail, maybe labor, before eyeing the NYPD. In 2008, at about 23, he joined the force, landing in the 105 precinct in Queens Village, a diverse, gritty patch of row houses and strip malls plagued by petty crime. Smith fit the cop mold, 5'10", lean, a smooth talker who charmed his way up. By 2018, he was a veteran patrolman, married, living in Albans, Queens, a black middle-class enclave. To his squad, he was a joker, brash, cocky, always ready with a quip. But that bravado hit a hustle. Starting in January 2018, Smith ran a bribery racket, $500 to $1,000 a pop to make traffic tickets vanish. He'd lean into drivers at stops, all smiles, pocketing cash from a tow truck operator named Sean Brown to fix violations, over 100 tickets erased in 2 years. He bragged about it, telling Brown in recorded calls, "I'm one of the most corrupt cops in the 105th, laughing like it was a badge of honor. The precinct didn't blink. Small-time grift often slipped through." Retirement came in July 2020, after 12 years on the force. Smith, now 37, walked away with a pension, but the hustle didn't stop. By November 2020, he jumped into the drug game, teaming with a crew to move 500 grams of heroin from Queens to Maryland. On November 19, 2020, he drove the load himself, his old NYPD Glock tucked in his waistband, figuring his cop cred would shield him. He boasted to his buyer, "I know how this works, I'm untouchable." But the feds were listening. An informant, likely Brown, flipped after a bust, wore a wire, catching Smith's every word. The DEA and NYPD's internal affairs had him cold. Phone taps, GPS on his car, a sting ready to snap. The trap closed on June 23, 2021. Agents swarmed Smith Street, Albans' home, cuffing him as neighbors gawked. The indictment was a laundry list: bribery, heroin distribution, illegal firearm possession as a felon. Evidence stacked high, wiretaps of his brags, bank records of bribe cash. The heroin seized mid-deal. The NYPD stripped his pension. His wife stood by, stunned. The trial hit Brooklyn's federal court in 2022, a quick, brutal affair. Prosecutors played his own voice. Most corrupt, untouchable, letting his ego bury him. Smith, 39, sat slumped, his grin gone, pleading guilty to all counts on March 15, 2022, hoping for leniency. No dice. Sentencing landed on September 15, 2022, before Judge Rachel Kovner. She didn't flinch. 97 months, over 8 years in federal prison, no parole, plus 3 years supervised release. Prison hit fast. FCI Allenwood Medium in Pennsylvania. DS Derek Ridgewell, the framer who fell. Derek Arnold Ridgewell was born in 1945 in Woking, Surrey, a sleepy town 25 miles southwest of London. Raised in a white working-class family, parents' names buried in time, no school glory at Woking Grammar, just a restless teen who craved action. At 18, in 1963, he joined the British South Africa Police in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, a colonial force policing a racially charged regime. 3 years under apartheid's shadow honed his edge. Interrogation, control, a taste for bending rules. Back in England by 1967, he landed with the British Transport Police, BTP, badge gleaming, assigned to London's rail hubs, King's Cross, Waterloo, where crime hummed. Ridgewell climbed quick, constable to detective sergeant by the early 70s. From 1969, he targeted black youths, West Indian immigrants mostly, framing them for thefts and muggings. The Oval four black men nabbed at Oval Station in 1972, got 2 years each for stealing purses Ridgewell planted. The Stockwell Six followed, pinched for attempted theft, with no evidence but his word. He cooked confessions, slipped drugs into pockets, and smirked as judges swallowed his lies. Dozens jailed, lives wrecked, all to pad his arrest stats. By 1973, he'd flipped the script, teaming with crooks to rob mailbags from trains. One haul on July 10, 1978, netted £300,000, over £1.5 million today. Cash, bonds, split with a crew including Ronnie Bigg's old mates. Ridgewell's cut was hefty. He flashed it on cars, suits, a cushy flat in South London. On May 15, 1980, Scotland Yard hauled him in, cuffs on a cop who'd framed his way to the top. Trial hit London's Old Bailey in 1981, a swift gut punch. Prosecutors laid out the framing, Oval 4, Stockwell 6, more. Then the theft, dates, hauls, witnesses spilling. Ridgewell, 36, sat stone-faced, claiming setup by jealous brass. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on conspiracy to steal. 7 years handed down on March 20th, 1981. Judge John Hazen called him a disgrace to the uniform. Prison was his endgame. HM Prison Ford, a low-security spot in Sussex, took him in 1981. At 37, he was no tough guy. Lanky, smug, a cop hated by cons. On December 22nd, 1982, he dropped dead. Heart attack, official word, at 37. The Oval 4 walked free in 2019, the Stockwell 6 in 2021. His lies undone. Joseph Miedzianowski, Chicago's cocaine cop. Joseph Jerome Miedzianowski was born on September 12, 1952, in Chicago's Portage Park. A stocky kid with a fighter's glare, he muscled through Lane Tech High, graduating in 1970 with no frills. At 19, he joined the Army, serving in Vietnam from 1971 to 1973 as a medic with the 101st Airborne, stitching wounds, learning to thrive in chaos. Back in '74, he pinned on a Chicago PD badge, landing in the 10th District, a West Side war zone of gangs and dope. By the '80s, he'd hit detective in the Gang Crimes Unit, a star with 70 commendations and a rep for busting heads. Married to Alina, father to 3, he lived loud in Jefferson Park. Around 1983, he crossed the line, linking with the Latin Kings and gangster disciples, gangs he was paid to dismantle. He guarded cocaine runs, 50 kilos from Miami in '89, 24 more in '95. Delivered in his squad car to stash spots like 2300 North Mango Avenue. He leaked names undercover cops like Eddie Simmons, killed in '91, and sold seized guns back to the streets, pocketing $10,000 a pop. His take? Over $1 million in 15 years, stashed in safes and blown on Vegas trips. He ran it like a Don. 10 dealers on his payroll, including Juan Jurassic Martyr, a kingpin he shielded. He'd bust rivals, plant dope, then flip their haul to his crew. 22 guns traced to him later. In '95, he had snitch Anthony Sumner whacked. Body never found, a warning to talkers. The CPD missed it, but by 1998, the feds smelled blood. Dealer Bill B.J. Jones flipped, wired up, catching Miedzianowski plotting a 100-kilo deal. On December 17, 1998, FBI and DEA swarmed his home. Cuffs on, $150,000 cash seized. His kid's screams in the background. The rap sheet was thick. Racketeering, drug conspiracy, firearms charges, a decade of dirt. Trial hit Chicago's federal court in 2001, a brutal takedown. 60 witnesses, dealers, ex-cops, Jones, spilled it all, backed by tapes, kilos, and gun logs. Miedzianowski, 49, sat hulking, claiming he was deep undercover. The jury saw through it, guilty on 10 counts, April 27, 2001. On January 31, 2003, Judge Blanche Manning handed down life without parole, no appeal. Prison was his crypt, ADX Florence, Colorado, the Supermax Alcatraz of the Rockies. At 73 in 2025, he's a relic, burly but worn, locked 23 hours a day in a 7x12 box. Philip Brailsford, the trigger in the hallway. Philip Mitchell Brailsford was born in 1990 in Glendale, Arizona. Raised in a white middle-class family, dad a mechanic, mom a teacher, a skinny kid with a buzz cut and restless energy. At Peoria High, he coasted. Decent grades, no sports fame, graduating in 2008 with a yen for action. Post-school, he worked retail, Best Buy maybe, before joining the Arizona Army National Guard in 2010, a weekend warrior gig that fed his taste for guns. By 2013, at 23, he pinned on a Mesa PD badge. Brailsford fit the rookie mold. 5'10", wiry, a babyface with a Glock on his hip. To his squad, he was green but gung-ho, racking up routine stops in Mesa's rougher corners. On January 18, 2016, dispatch got a call, someone flashing a rifle in a La Quinta Inn window, room 502. Brailsford and 5 cops rolled up, finding Daniel Shaver, 26, a pest control worker from Texas, drinking with 2 guests. No rifle, just a pellet gun for his job. Ordered into the hall, Shaver, unarmed, drunk, sobbing, crawled as Brailsford barked commands, "Hands up, don't move." Shaver, confused, reached to pull up his shorts. Brailsford fired 5 AR-15 rounds, chest and head, 2:31 a.m. Shaver died in a puddle, begging cut short. The body cam footage went viral. Mesa fired him in March 2016, citing the rifle etching and prior warnings. 2 excessive force complaints in 15. The Maricopa County DA charged him with second-degree murder on March 4, 2016, a rare move against a cop. Trial hit Mesa Superior Court in October 2017, a national flashpoint. Prosecutors showed the video, Shaver's hands empty, Brailsford's split-second pull. Defense claimed fear. Shaver's reach a threat. On December 7, 2017, an all-white jury acquitted him. Groans in the gallery, no conviction on murder. Shaver's family sued Mesa. $75 million civil case, settled for $8 million in 2018. Brailsford, 27, stayed free, briefly rehired in 2018 to snag a pension, $2,500 a month for PTSD, then cut loose again after backlash. The feds stepped in, probing civil rights violations. In 2020, new evidence. Witnesses saying Brailsford bragged, "I'd do it again," flipped the script. On June 17, 2020, he was indicted on federal excessive force charges. Trial hit Phoenix in 2021. Guilty, November 19, 2021. Judge G. Murray Snow gave him 11 years on March 15th. Du mila ventidue, no parole. Prison took him fast. FCI Phoenix, a medium security pen in Arizona's heat. At 35 in 2025, he's a marked man. Skinny, no soldier now, a cop who killed in a place that hates badges. Inmates know Shaver's name. Taunts fly. A 2023 shank scare left him bruised, guards tight-lipped. Release looms in 2031, if he lasts, a name cursed in Mesa. 10 stories done. When does a cop's gun write his fate? You've just heard. 10 badges, 10 betrayals. A cop's oath is a thin line, and these men crossed it with blood, greed, and arrogance. What's a badge worth when it's soaked in guilt? You've heard their fates, now you decide.